Okay, good morning, government students. Last lesson, we were looking at the legislative branch and just kind of the basics of the makeup of the legislative branch, which is Congress. And Congress, again, is divided into the House and the Senate. And so today we're going to focus mainly on the powers of Congress, meaning what they're able to do. And so your homework assignment is a reading, and it discusses there's actually 6 different types of powers. So I thought it would be nice to have a video to go with it because it can be kind of confusing. So again, we're looking at the powers of Congress, and these are listed, some of them are listed, I should say, in the Constitution in Article 1, as we've been looking at. So I'm going to share my screen. And so your assignment, hold on one second here. Your assignment, you're not going to necessarily see what I'm seeing here. You'll just see the worksheet. So again, it's good that you're watching the video because you'll get kind of some extra help here with your homework assignment. So basically your homework assignment is to read this information. There's a couple videos on YouTube that I posted to go with it. And then after you've kind of gone through everything, then answer the questions below. So again, we're talking about the legislative branch, which is Article 1, and we're looking at what Congress can do. And if you look in the Constitution, there are some specific listed powers, and those listed are taxing, borrowing money, regulating trade, and the process for becoming a citizen. There also is information about coining money, which means to basically make money, a system of weights and measurements, which at the time was really important, but now not so much, the post office, and declaring war, which is sometimes some students often don't know or understand, but Congress actually declares war. The president cannot declare war. And then finally, provide for the military. So these are the ones that are specifically listed. There's a section in the Constitution, as you see here. It's called, or is known as, the Elastic Clause, and I wrote off a little extra note here, and sometimes it's known as the Necessary and Proper Clause. And basically what it is a sentence that gives Congress almost unlimited power in a way, because it basically is saying that Congress has the right to do what it needs to do to carry out its responsibilities. And the reason they put this in there is because, obviously things are going to be different in 1790 than they are in 2020. And the writers of the Constitution totally understood that at that time, that, things were going to change. So this clause was available for them to kind of make new decisions as things come up. And so a lot of times when I describe the elastic clause, I like to describe it as like a rubber band, how a rubber band stretches or constricts, because that's kind of how it is. It changes over time. It allows more things in some periods of time and maybe less in others. So anyway, that's what that's about. Okay, so these are the first 3 types of powers listed, and we're not going to actually spend as much time here as we will, or as concerned with the other powers that are listed later in the reading. So enumerated powers, implied powers, and inherent powers. Enumerated powers means that they're actually listed. Enumerated means numbered or listed, so that's an easy way for you to remember that they're actually specifically written out. Implied powers are more general. There's not a lot of information about how to do the post office, or how to take care of the roads or things like that, but it's part of the Constitution. It's just not specific. And then inherent powers are just things that the government does that aren't necessarily listed, but they just need them. Inherent is kind of like, it's just there. It just has to happen. And so those are the 3 types of powers that the national government has, that Congress has. So that's a good way to remember that, but as the difference between the last 3 that are going to be listed here in this final paragraph. So there are limits and restrictions on Congress and what actually the state can do. One limit is known as habeas corpus, and habeas corpus actually means you have the body. And this comes from prior to the American Revolution, when a lot of times people would be arrested for something and often would never see a judge and would spend the rest of their life in jail. They wouldn't know what they were arrested for. There was just a lot of shenanigans happening. And so they wanted to make sure that that was specifically listed in the Constitution, that you can't arrest someone and not have them see a judge. Bills of attainder means that a person can't be, again, convicted of something without having a trial. And actually, these things are more listed specifically in the first few amendments, which we'll get to later. And then finally, another limit on Congress is Congress cannot pass ex post facto laws. So what that means is, if the example they give here is, Mr. Z smoked on Monday and it was not a crime at the time. And then on Tuesday, they passed a law that said you can't smoke anymore in the United States. And so Wednesday, the police came and arrested him for smoking on Monday, which he can't do because he did it before the law was passed. So that's an example of ex post facto. It's like after the fact. You can't be arrested for something that was legal at the time, but now illegal. Okay, and then finally, there's three types of powers that I think are more important to understand. These are the categories that we can put those national powers and the state powers within, because that's more important. A more important part of our Constitution is how we work together, how the federal government works together with the state governments. So I actually have a graphic organizer that I posted on the class page, and it's here to kind of give you an idea of what it means. So the national government has these listed powers, and then the state governments have reserve powers. So what this means is basically that the state government is only allowed to do these things. The national government cannot. And the national government can only do these things. And so if we look back at our worksheet, we have delegated powers. Those are powers that the government can do, the national government, and then reserved are the state's powers. In the middle here are concurrent powers. That means they both can do them. Con is together. So these are things that both the national and the state governments do. So for example, when you get a job, or if you have a job, you'll see you have state taxes and you have national taxes. So that's a great example of concurrent powers. So anyway, use this graphic organizer to help you. Also, watch the other YouTube videos. And then once you're done with all of that, go ahead and answer these questions. So that is it. And let me know if you have any questions.